Elon Musk is the richest person on the planet today with a net worth of over $250 billion. But did you know that about a century ago there was a man who was worth over $400 billion in today's money? This amount is so big that it would make him richer than Elon Musk and Bernard Arnault's wealth combined. The individual in question is John D. Rockefeller. He was an American entrepreneur and philanthropist who formed the Standard Oil Company. Standard Oil Company was the first big American corporate trust which dominated the oil industry. Let's explore the life of this American oil magnate and his rise to the greatest financial success in modern history. Rockefeller was the second child born to con artist William Avery Rockefeller, commonly known as Bill, and Eliza Davison in Richford, New York. Bill was a traveling salesman who identified himself as a botanic physician, claiming to be able to cure cancers and charging up to $25 every treatment. Throughout his life, Bill was notorious for conducting schemes, while Eliza was a stay-at-home mom who tried to keep her family together while Bill was away for long periods of time. Eliza was frugal by nature and circumstance, and she instilled in her son the belief that willful waste produces terrible want. John helped out around the house and supplemented his income by growing turkeys, selling potatoes and candies, and ultimately lending modest amounts of money to neighbors. He always got the better end of any bargain by trading dishes for platters, as his father advised. He later stated, "From the beginning, I was trained to work, to save, and to give." When Rockefeller was a boy, his family moved to Moravia, New York, and to Owego, New York in 1851, where he attended Owego Academy. In 1853, his family moved to Cleveland, Ohio, where he attended his high school. In September 1855, when Rockefeller was 16, he got his first job as an assistant bookkeeper working for a small commission firm in Cleveland called Hewitt & Tuttle. Rockefeller received $16 a month for his 3-month working. During his first year, he received $31 a month, which was increased up to $58 a month for his excellence at the job. As a youth, Rockefeller said that his two great ambitions were to make $100,000, which is equivalent to $3.7 million in 2022 dollars, and to live 100 years. At the age of 19, Rockefeller formed a commercial partnership with a neighbor named Morris Clark. They established their own commission firm with a $2,000 investment by each. They had made a profit of $4,400 in 1860 and $17,000 in 1861, after grossing $450,000 in their first year of operation. The commission merchant industry was very competitive. Clark and Rockefeller's success owed much to Rockefeller's inherent business acumen. During the Civil War, their company grew dramatically. Their commissions increased as grain prices increased. Because most of their sales were done on commission, Clark and Rockefeller didn't have to worry about price changes. Rockefeller's manner was deliberate and exact. He was a planner, not a gambler. He abstained from speculating and denied making advances or loans. Rockefeller was a tireless worker. He toured widely around Ohio, drumming up business before going to the banks and borrowing significant sums of money to handle the shipment. Every year, the firm grew thanks to this aggressive approach. However, by the early 1860s, Rockefeller had realized that Cleveland's commission merchant sector had a limited future. He felt that he had a chance in oil at that point. In 1863, Rockefeller and several partners entered the booming new oil industry by investing in a Cleveland refinery. In 1865, Rockefeller took out a loan to buy out some of his partners and gain control of the refinery, which had grown to be Cleveland's largest. He attracted additional partners and developed his commercial interests in the expanding oil sector during the following few years. Kerosene, a petroleum-based fuel used in lights, was becoming an economic necessity at the time. In 1870, Rockefeller, his younger brother William Henry Flagler, and a number of other persons created the Standard Oil Company of Ohio, whose president and major stakeholder was John D. Rockefeller. Standard Oil established a monopoly in the oil business by the acquisition of refineries and building firms to distribute and advertise its products globally. These enterprises were merged into the Standard Oil Trust in 1882, giving it control over 90% of the nation's refineries and pipelines. Standard Oil did everything from manufacture its own oil barrels to hire experts to come up with novel uses for petroleum byproducts in order to take advantage of economies of scale. Rockefeller's immense riches and success made him a target for muckraking journalists, reform politicians, and others who saw him as a symbol of corporate greed and attacked the tactics he used to build his empire. The New York Times wrote in 1937, he was accused of stamping out competition, becoming rich on railroad rebates, hiring men to spy on other enterprises, forming secret deals, coercing rivals to join the Standard Oil Company under threat of being put out of business, and so on. In 1890, the Sherman Antitrust Act, the first federal legislation forbidding trusts and combinations that restrict commerce, was approved by the United States. The Standard Oil Trust was dissolved by the Ohio Supreme Court 2 years later. Nevertheless, the trust's activities were quickly absorbed by Standard Oil of New Jersey, which served as a holding corporation. In 1911, after years of litigation, the United States Supreme Court concluded that Standard Oil of New Jersey had breached antitrust laws and ordered the company to dissolve, which was thus broken up into more than 30 individual companies. Rockefeller's charitable giving began with his first job as a bookkeeper at age 16. He, at that time, gave 6% of his earnings to charity, as recorded in his personal ledger. By the time he was 20, his charity exceeded 10% of his income. Rockefeller's contributions to education and medicine were of unrivaled magnitude, creating a kind of philanthropy never seen before. Moreover, his investments and giving strategies perpetuated the modern foundation model established by Andrew Carnegie. His major philanthropy have been to the University of Chicago, funding its establishment in 1962. He also set up the Rockefeller Institute for Medical Research, now known as Rockefeller University, and his gifts to it totaled $50 million by the 1930s. Rockefeller also founded the General Education Board in 1903. The General Education Board helped to establish high schools throughout the South by providing free professional advice on improving instruction and education. The effort was a cooperative one, and local money was used to build the high schools. In 1919, Rockefeller donated $50 million to the board to raise academic salaries, which were very low in the wake of World War I. He has had several other examples of philanthropy which has been continued by the Rockefeller family. In his 50s, Rockefeller suffered from moderate depression and digestive troubles. During a stressful period in the 1890s, he developed alopecia, the loss of some or all body hair. His mustache disappeared and his hair never grew back. But other health complaints subsided as he lightened his workload. Rockefeller died of arteriosclerosis on May 23, 1937. Arteriosclerosis is the thickening, hardening, and loss of elasticity of the walls of arteries. Rockefeller died less than 2 months shy of his 98th birthday at the Casements, which was his home in Ormond Beach, Florida. He was buried in Lakeview Cemetery in Cleveland. When he died, his net worth was estimated to be $1.4 billion, which would be worth over $400 billion in 2022 after adjusting the inflation. Let me remind you that Rockefeller accumulated well over $100,000 and lived for 97 years. He achieved well over his target in his lifetime in terms of money and lived almost a century, as he had set the goal in his youth.